All right, welcome everyone. We're just waiting for our director is having a little bit of a technical issue, but hopefully we'll be here in a minute. In the meantime, welcome. Thank you for coming. Um, Hopefully she's right behind. But I think we're going to go ahead and get started so that we can stay on track for the day. So, um, whoop. So Dr. Akata will be joining us momentarily, hopefully. She's the Director of Graduate Studies for the program, and is also a professor of African American and American Studies, Comp Lit, and Francophone Studies here on campus. My name is Julie Burnett. I'm the Student Services Coordinator for the department. I've been in the department for a little over 5 years and doing grad admissions work for close to 15. So I'm happy to answer questions anytime that you have them as it comes up throughout the process. So to go ahead and get started, tell you a little bit about the U of M doctoral program in comparative literature. Hopefully Frida will be able to jump in here in a few minutes. The PhD program is a 6-year program here at U of M. We emphasize both international and interdisciplinary nature of comparative literature, but our curriculum is really flexible and students are allowed to kind of focus their area of expertise and their areas of traditional interest wherever they like. The program does have strong language requirements, but also has flexibility in the ways that you can develop those skills and then use those skills as you're here. We do place a strong emphasis on literary, critical, and cultural theory, but that is broadly defined. It is an interdisciplinary degree, so every one of our faculty members has a joint appointment in at least one other department, and many are also affiliated or associated with area study centers at the International Institute. We offer a lot of courses that are met together with other departments, so there's a lot of opportunities for some cross studies there. Students in our program are actually required to take classes outside of the department. 8 of the 12 required courses that you do for your coursework are outside, so you'll have lots of opportunities for that. And then there's a lot of opportunities to earn certificates in other programs. So things like women and gender studies, museum studies, Judaic studies, critical translation studies, which is offered by us, that you can work on while you're here doing a PhD as well. There are a number of milestones built into the program. Those include the 3rd term review, which you do in your 2nd year, which is essentially just to make sure you're on track, talk to the faculty committee about your trajectory and where you're going. Our preliminary exams are done in the 3rd year, in the winter semester of your fall year, 2nd semester. Your candidacy project and your prospectus are your next 2, both done in year 4. And then we are a 6-year program, so defense happens around year 6. We really like to emphasize the versatile PhD and the opportunities that you have within the humanities inside and outside of academia. So while we're talking to our students and helping them prep for faculty positions, we're also encouraging our students to explore careers but outside of academia as professional journalists, bloggers, translators. There are internships and other sources of funding that you can use to try to work on those or to build those skills while you're here. A little bit about what our alums are doing, since that is a frequent question. So we have data for the last 20-ish years. These are their initial placements. but then their placements now, so roughly a third are either tenure track or instructional faculty. Actually, close to half are doing faculty work either on the tenure track or on the non-tenure track. And quite a few outside of that are in academia. So you can see that there are some options outside academia as well. Our program comes with guaranteed funding for 6 years. So the standard package includes full tuition here at U of M, health and dental insurance for you and any dependents you might have, which is something that is not offered at a lot of other institutions. So not only for your dependents, but fully covered by the university for your dependents. A stipend for living expenses and summer funding. The summer funding as of this year just got increased, so it is the same as the academic year, which is good news. So we're looking at roughly a stipend of around $36,000 a year now between the 3 fall, winter, and summer terms. So each student in the program also gets $5,000 in startup research funding that they can use for summer language study or research to start building their skills as they come into the program. And then in the 4th year, everybody is guaranteed at least 1 semester of fellowship so that you can travel or spend some time focusing on your writing and doing what you need to do. Outside of that, funding is primarily provided through a combination of fellowships and teaching appointments, which are referred to as GSI positions here on campus. So students in their first year typically receive a fellowship that means you don't have to teach during the first year. Students in their second year begin teaching first for the English department and then in comparative literature right now. So in their 3rd year, so one of our students who is here, our current students who I'll introduce you to in a minute, is in that 3rd year right now and just started doing this. There are also a ton of other funding opportunities on campus, both from the department and outside the department. Inside the department, we also offer things like conference travel grants, job seeking funds, emergency and discretionary funding is available. And then from outside of our unit, there are a ton of opportunities from Rackham Graduate School, which is kind of an umbrella over us that provides funding for also foreign language study, dissertation research, conference travel, emergency grants, all kinds of great things. Center for Education of Women Plus also has a ton of funding. The Institute for the Humanities has fellowships. Of course, there's an Office of Financial Aid that can help work with students and provide some funding. And then there are some other links for here. The International Institute has a ton of funding for language travel and research as well. So there are lots of opportunities to get some funding. I do have 2 current students here with us, which I'm going to in, so they are visible for everybody. So this is Julia and Delsa. Julia is in her 6th year of the program and Delsa is in her 3rd. So I'm going to let them talk to you for a minute about what it's like to be in the program. And then at the hopefully they can both stick around at the end and answer more questions too. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm in my 6th year. I guess I'll say what I'm studying. I study contemporary American literature and digital studies. So I'm a student doing a certificate program in the Digital Studies Institute. So if you're interested in kind of any comparisons between media and online material, Michigan is a especially good place for that. given the institute, but Complet is also, very open to students taking comparative media approaches. So that's something that's been really good for me in this particular program. At Delsa.
Hell yes. Hello. I'm Delsa, a third year. Similarly to Julia, I also do comparative media too. I study Japanese horror games and zombies, affect and trauma, like kind of body politics type stuff. And so talking to that point exactly, like Complet is so interdisciplinary and really open minded about what even literature is and being able to take theory and talk about stuff that's coming out right now, like contemporary things that I find important, or like it's not just entertainment anymore. And it differs from other departments in a ways that is really like nice and freeing and exploratory. So yeah, that's me. I'm teaching 122 this year, which is writing world literatures, and like that's kind of where you base people off of like what is Complet in the first place. And I'm teaching a zombie class, so it's kind of creative writing, talking about zombie theory and watching movies and playing games.
All right. And like I said, Julia and Delsa will both be here hopefully for the FAQs. So if you have questions, you can ask them more about their experiences too. But I want to make sure I get plenty of time to talk to you about the admissions requirements, which is what most folks are here to learn about. So the first thing to note is that we have a holistic application review process. And really what we're looking for is students who have a good fit with the program. We also aim for a diverse selection of thematic and global interests in each cohort. So we wouldn't want to focus on a whole cohort of people who are doing Ukrainian poetry. We would like some diversity in there. So that can make a difference in admissions. But really what it means when we say holistic admissions is that we're looking at you as an entire student, and we're looking at your application portfolio as a whole. So we're looking at your statement of purpose, your personal statement, your transcripts, your letters, your writing samples, but we don't focus on one criteria to the exclusion of the others. And there is no minimum requirement in a GPA or any other type of score outside of the English language proficiency scores, which we don't set. But that's probably the most frequently asked question I get is, what if my GPA is a concern, or one of those things. So I want to stress that we're going to look at the entire application, and everything in the application holds weight. So there's not one thing that would make or break an application. Our application is administered by Rackham Grad School. It says here we'll open in early September, but I think I just got the notification earlier this week that it is open, so you can start your application anytime. We do recommend that you go in and start early. You can log in and out as many times as you need to get that done. But it's helpful to familiarize yourself with the system, make sure you're in there, get your ID number, which is issued by the university once you start applying. I also want to highlight that we have quite a few FAQs on our website. So that's a great place to start looking as you have questions, application material questions, information about the programming, information about funding, information about housing. As you get further in the process, we work with you more specifically to answer these questions, but this is a great place to get started. So the application does have quite a few components. There's a statement of purpose and a personal statement. We'll talk about in a minute about the difference between those two, but it is two separate statements. You'll also submit a CV or a resume, 2 writing samples, 3 letters of recommendation, your transcripts, and you'll need demonstration of English language proficiency if you're a non-native speaker. Which is why it is a lot, which is why we encourage you to get started early. I do want to note right off the bat that GRE scores not only are not required, but are no longer reviewed by the institution. So If you send GRE scores, they will not be seen by the committee. So you do not need to send any GRE scores. One other thing I want to highlight on the actual form before I talk about the specific components for the program is to make sure you fill out this activities information section. It doesn't come out and say it in the application, but this is one of the areas that we can look at to see if we can nominate you for funding or fellowships for the program. It really, really helps us for you to be detailed here, as detailed as you can in 500 characters. But anything that you can provide here about volunteer experiences, work experiences, other information, specifically if it's related to social, educational, economic disparities, race, gender, improving race relations in the US. These are all things that we really want to hear about and know about. Of course, if there's not enough room here, you can expand on these in your personal statement, but please make sure to mention that information. A little bit about the academic statement of purpose should be about 500 words long. Sorry, it's been a long week here. And it should talk about your intellectual trajectory, your scholarly plans, your general interest in the humanities, and the reasons for choosing to apply to Complit at U of M. So this is a place where you're going to really talk about how you got here, what you want to study, and why you think U of M is the place for you to do that. And it should also include some information about your fields of interest. In addition to that, we do require also a personal statement. One of the things that we get the most email about probably is, I'm not sure what the difference is between the two. And I'm happy if you're working on your statements and you're like, I'm not sure where this goes. If anybody would like to email and ask, I'm happy to maybe point you in the right direction. Most important thing to point out is that you should not repeat sentences between the two statements. And by no means should you submit the same statement twice, which does happen from time to time, but is not beneficial to you as the applicant. So the personal statement really is helping us understand how you got interested in Complit, any challenges you might have faced or relevant experiences you've had, what inspirations you might have for your future. So there's a longer prompt here. I won't read the whole thing to you. It's also a place where you can mention financial and personal hardships, that kind of thing. I should mention that this statement never goes beyond the admissions committee. So that is some very protected information if you're worried about confidentiality and what you're putting there. Sometimes we will share statement of purpose with other grad students or faculty who may be interested in working with you and especially in the recruitment stages. But we never share this personal statement outside of the committee. However, what we do with a statement like that activities information is that this is often a place where we can see if there are extra fellowships that we can nominate you for. So if you're comfortable sharing this information, we encourage you to share it. Letters of recommendation, you do need 3 letters. We recommend that you request letters from those best able to assess your ability to succeed in graduate school. You can have letters submitted from whoever you want, but letters from instructors are usually more helpful than those from folks that you've worked with or been employed with. Oftentimes too, if it's better for you to get a letter from an instructor who knows you very well than maybe the prominent scholar in the field who doesn't know you that well at your institution, but you have a tangential connection. It's better to have somebody who can actually talk about your skills and abilities in these letters. We do recommend that you share your statement of purpose and CV with your letter writers before they're asked to submit. They do have the same submission deadline as the application deadline, which is December 1, which is also why we encourage you to get started now and at least share with them a draft of your other documents so that it can help them with their letter. We also recommend that you reach out to them ideally several months before the deadline, just so they have time to plan for the deadline and get your information in. We do not accept any letters through Interfolio or third-party services. They all need to be directly submitted through U of M's system. So that's something to keep in mind. Once you start an application, you can actually request your letters far in advance of submitting the application. So we do recommend that you do that so that you're not waiting on your letter writers to have your application complete. A few more questions you'll see on the application that are specific to comparative literature. You can list up to 5 fields of areas of interest. We do ask that you do at least 3. You will also list out faculty that you are interested in working with. The language on this question has actually changed slightly from what's in this screenshot, but it's essentially the same language. So there are 2 parts to this question. The first is the core complet faculty that you would like to work with, who are folks that have an appointment in comparative literature, whose research interests may be similar to yours. They don't have to be an exact match. It's just folks that you are interested in working with, and they may have a thematic, but not the same regional interest, that kind of thing. So it's fairly open. The second part of that is where you can list faculty at U of M who are either, it says not affiliated here with, but this has recently changed. So my apologies, we haven't updated the slides. I will update them before I post them to the website after this presentation. The second section is for complet affiliated faculty who are also listed on our website. Those are faculty who don't have specific appointments with us, but work closely with the department. And then you can also list any other faculty at U of M that you think would be a good fit for you, whether or not they have an affiliation with the department. We also ask specific questions about language that you anticipate using during your graduate studies. So the general part of the application that every applicant fills out at U of M is going to ask about your current language levels and abilities. This question is different in that we really here are getting at what do you want to study as part of your graduate program. So for a lot of folks, those will be the same, but for some they are not. And one thing that we do want to know about is what languages you haven't started yet that you might be interested in. You're going to want to make sure you list at least 2 languages here, since the program requires proficiency in at least 2 languages other than English. But if you're interested in more, you can list those as well. There's another question that we like to highlight. This is another question that flags folks for funding. So if you have any interest in Judaic studies, there is another question for you to fill out there. So pay attention to that if that's relevant to you. Writing samples are another thing that we get a lot of questions about. So you are required to have 2 writing samples. One is in English and one is in a second language that should demonstrate language proficiency. It does not necessarily have to be one of the languages that you plan to work in, but that is certainly helpful and shows the faculty what your abilities already are in that language and how we could kind of get you up and going off the ground quickly. We do realize that's not always possible though. So if you can't get your second language sample in one of the languages that you plan to use, it is okay to use another language. Most important is that literary translations do not count as writing samples unless you have done a substantial amount of critical introduction and reflection in the translation. So we get that question quite a bit as well. I also just want to take a minute to note that the information that you provide on our application gives us an idea about what you're interested in working with, but it isn't a contract, right? So if you end up getting accepted into the program, and Delsa's nodding her head because she knows a lot of students have had these experiences, but your project may very well change once you get here and start to explore your interests. Julia also actually came to us from another program, so her interests changed wildly enough that she switched programs. So we often get students who are really stressed out that, you know, they don't have the exact research question in mind, and that's okay because you're going to use your first couple of years in your program to really hone your question and find out what you're writing about. So it is okay to acknowledge what you don't know yet or what you're still trying to figure out in your statement. I would almost say it's better to do that than to submit a statement where you have already answered all of your own questions and you figured out your own problem, because if you do that, then the committee may come back and say, well, why do you actually need this degree then if you've already answered your questions? So that's something to keep in mind and balance out as you write your statement. Of course, the other frequent question we get is, how do I make my application more competitive? Really planning in advance and submitting a good quality application is what's going to be important. So really make sure you're taking the time to write your personal statements. Have somebody else read both statements if you have somebody available to do that. I think that, and it happens every year in every program I've ever worked with, that somebody accidentally lists the wrong university in their statement because you're writing multiple statements. We understand it, you're not penalized for it, but it can be a sign that you haven't done that proofing, and that's important. Again, contact your letter writers well in advance so that they have time to think about what they're going to write, and provide them with your materials so they know what you're interested in and what your trajectory is. Other than that, we also recommend that you just research the department on our strengths. Make sure you comb through the website. It's not required, but it will help you to help explain to us why you would fit at U of M and why this is the right program for you. You can contact members of the faculty. There's no guarantee that they will have the time to meet with you. Some of them will, some of them won't. It just depends on if they're on leave or what their assignments are this semester, how much they're teaching, what their availability is. But you can certainly always reach out. You can also reach out to me as the coordinator anytime. Student services is my title and my whole job. So my whole job is to help answer these types of questions. So for more information, you can check out our website. Definitely be sure to visit our faculty and grad student pages where there are profiles of what folks are working on and what they're interested in. My email address is here, so feel free to reach out at any time. And I think we can move on to questions. So if anybody has a question, you can raise your hand or pop your question in the chat and we will start answering your questions. Soon as I remember how to do that. So Cassidy, if you would like to go first, we can answer your question.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question for Delsa, because as soon as you mentioned Japanese horror games, I got super excited because I also have a huge interest in Japanese video games. So I was just wondering if you could go into a little bit more of your experience here and how you're able to kind of explore your interest. That would be great.
100%. Great question. No, for real. So like Julie had said earlier, how you do not have a binding contract when you get here with what you apply with. I actually applied studying Genji Monogatari and like actually ancient Japanese literature. So in terms of my interests, I double majored in Japanese and English in college, came here and I'm like, well, I'm not a master at this language yet. And Japanese video games is what I did for fun, but then being able to call it research and say, well, hold on here. There's some theoretical things going on here, there's representations, there's aesthetic things going on, and like being interested in Japanese literature and culture, that then can be embedded in my research. So for me, what that ends up looking like is I am constantly playing new games all the time. Like from even the big companies like Capcom, like Resident Evil, the show versus the game versus the movie. Like those, that in and of itself is a complete paper right there. That is a conference paper for ACLA or any of these big complit conferences. So in terms of like making PhD research your fun like hobbies, that's how I've kind of gamed the system, and that's just my little secret. So
Awesome. Thank you.
I was going to jump in and add that if like game studies is something interesting to people, that and I'm like, why isn't Delsa doing the digital studies certificate? Because there is like a really big games archive at Michigan, and like a lot of people in digital studies are doing projects about games and game design. So there is like, not only can you do it in comp lit, there's also kind of like support in other departments and people who are working on that. So, you know, that's worth looking into as kind of like okay, I'm applying here and I'm going to say like one thing that's attractive to me about this program is that I'd be able to do like game studies in a very serious way.
yes. Oh, Julia brings up a fantastic point. As earlier in the slides, like 8 out of 12 classes will be electives. You can go to the School of Information or Digital Studies and take classes on that, and that will go towards your complet certificate if that's what you choose to do, or a complet major and then Digital Studies certificate. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Is it Raja next?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Hi. I do have a question about English language requirement for international students. So I was wondering if we need to submit TOEFL scores if we have a degree from a U.S. institution, a master's degree. Like, is it still required, or can we submit something else to prove for proof?
Sure. So as long as you graduated with a full degree at the undergraduate or graduate level from a U.S. institution, you are exempt from having to submit a TOEFL or an IELTS score. So they'll be able to verify that from your transcripts that you submit. The website does specify for Rackham, since they're the ones who enforce that rule, that one-year degrees don't count for that, but as long as your grad or undergrad degree was taught solely in English, then you are exempt from that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Sarah?
Hello. I wanted to ask, I have an interest in minor language translation, and I was wondering what kind of support the university offers for students studying languages that aren't at UMichigan.
Good question. I actually have been working with students for quite a few years who are doing languages that aren't at U of M. So most of that work ends up getting done in the summer through summer research programs for which we have funding. But there are fellowships available to go study abroad, do those things. We also have a language resource center here that will help with language opportunities. There are something 58 maybe languages now taught at Michigan. It's over 50. So there are a lot of opportunities here, but there are also a lot of opportunities for us to connect you with different opportunities and funding sources to do that language study as well. And I want to grab the question from the chat really quick before we miss it, about the writing samples. Do they have a specific format? They do not. Readable is our preference. So there is no specific format for them, just so that they're easy for the faculty to read.
I can answer that question.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not working.
So here is Dr. Akato too. Sorry, we've had some technical issues, but she's with us now. So we're in the Q&A portion now.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone, and I'm sorry, I just couldn't connect. I don't know what's going on, but technology is always technology. When it fails you, it fails you. So here I am. So I was supposed to talk to you, I don't know, 40 minutes ago, but here I am. So the question is about the writing sample. So we don't have a template, but I think, so you have to write two essays. One is a personal essay, and the other one you have to more or less talk about the project that you want to start when you're in grad school. You kind of have to be flexible with that. So the personal essay, you have to talk about a little bit about who you are, what you want to do, what you want to study. And then your research statement, you have to tell the faculty, which kind of research you are interested in. So even though you may change it, you still have to come up with a research question, right? So when you were doing your undergraduate, there are research questions that you were interested in. So you have to kind of articulate those research interests in your research statement. As I said, you may change them. That's not an issue, because you're going to take courses with different professors, and you will find out that maybe you are interested in translation and you didn't know that, and then you're going to pursue translation studies. Or you may be interested in doing law and literature because you took classes with somebody called Professor Koto, maybe, and then you're going to change your research interest. But you have to, be flexible with that. More questions?
Yes. I think I do not know how to pronounce your name. You, maybe? Next.
Hey, Lulidis, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for this session. I am assuming that after the application period, there are some interviews. Would you like to inform us a bit about that too?
Yes. After we read your applications, we select, a few students, and we interview them. We talk to you. We go deeper into interests that you have. You will also have a chance to ask us questions. We have about 5 faculties. 5.
4 this year, I think. Yeah.
And then you can ask us about our research interests. The thing to do also is to go to the website and look at what each professor is doing, and then you can ask us questions about what we're doing. Recently, the research projects for each professor is always changing. I change my research project every, 5 years, 6 years. So you can ask what I'm doing now, and we can tell you that. And then we will ask you what you want to do, why you want to do that. It's a question of fit. If we see that for some reason what you want to do doesn't quite work with the faculty member that in the department, is good not to have you there, because when you come to grad school, it's really important that you have people that support you. It's really, really important. If you don't have support, it's not good to come to the institution. You really need to have support, intellectual support as well as other supports. So I'm sure that, the graduate students that you have there will tell you that.
And we do admit fairly small classes here in the department. Typically ranges from 2 to 5, depending on what our funding structure looks like for the year. But we aim to interview about 10 to 15 students. So
you need a network of faculty members as well as a community. It's really important when you are in grad school to have those.
All right. Is it Bule?
It's Bulle. Hi, and
hi.
thank you for the presentation. Hi. I wanted to ask about some of the projects or the final thesis that previous students have submitted. Really, I think I'm interested because of hearing about the range of courses on offer and the range of interests, to understand also what the range of output is. And maybe Dr. Ekota, you could also speak to what you're currently working on.
Yeah, so you see this wall here? I don't know if you can see this. These are all the PhD project that students have worked on in the past. They vary, you know. So in comparative literature, we are very flexible. You know, you can really, I'm sure, Delsa, did you talk about your project? You did? Julia, you did too? Excellent. Yeah. So yeah, we're very flexible. We're trying to support your project. So right now I'm working on global Blackness. After 2020, you know, after I saw what happened with George Floyd, not that, you know, I also read Claudia Rankin's, you know, Citizen. I mean, she kind of archives all the lives that have been lost for the past, I don't know, you know, 10 years in the US. It dawned on me that I needed to understand what it means to be Black in the world today. And it was really important to see that Black people around the globe stood up. And not only Black people stood up to like claim their identity, but you know, other people around the world used that moment also to claim, you know, their own struggle. They use that moment to like, you know, to fight for their own struggle. So I started thinking, there were two issues for me. You know, vulnerability was one of them. You know, it seems to me that when you're Black around the world, you're very vulnerable. So I started like, you know, thinking I needed to look at what it means to be vulnerable, you know, and then resilience was also another thing. So I'm working on that. I was in South Africa this summer and I went to Cape Town, but also Johannesburg to talk to students, but also people, just random people. I asked them what it means to be Black for them after apartheid. And these are the questions we were discussing. So it's really interesting. So I'm teaching a course right now on global Blackness, but I'm looking at European countries, you know, because after colonialism, you have lots of Black people, Africans in Europe. And then next, I'm going to look at Latin America. I'm supposed to take students to Brazil. And you know that you have lots of Afro-Brazilians, Black people in Brazil. So this is what I'm working on right now. Hopefully I can come up with a book. That's a project. So yeah, but it's really interesting. I'm looking at music, painting, almost everything where Black people kind of like, you know, solidify the identity, you know, the Black identity.
And then, like Frida said, we have folks working on a range of topics and different things. But we did have our first digital dissertation.
Yes.
About 2 years ago now. So we're also exploring with the institution itself different modes for completing a dissertation and what that looks like. We have a couple of folks who are interested in putting some translation projects into their dissertations. So it's something that is actually a growing interest and a growing area of flexibility as well. We have a couple questions that got typed in as well. So the first asks, If I'm selected for a PhD but unable to join due to an emergency, do we give the option of delaying and joining another year? It depends is the answer, actually. Sorry, I don't have a better answer, but it's very specific based on circumstances. So in that case, we would look at your specific situation and talk to the graduate school. They have some rules and regulations about what we can use as a deferral and what needs to be a new application the next year. I can tell you that for those who haven't been able to grant a referral, just in the 5 years that I've been here, we had someone who applied and then wasn't able to attend and reapplied the next year and was successful at getting in again. So not being able to come and having to reapply is not, we're not going to like just kick you out of the pool or anything like that. Your application would be considered again. So again, it just kind of depends. The next question is about those English language proficiency. So as long as English was the sole language of instruction at your university, again, that gets verified by your transcripts and your school. But if you'd like to have me take a look at it specifically and see if you meet the criteria or what we need to do, I'm happy to do that. You can send me an email and we can work on that. The next question is about early application decisions. We don't actually do early option decisions because what we're looking at is bringing in a cohort and bringing in some diversity in that cohort as far as, like we talked about, different fields, different regions of the globe, that kind of thing. Then we can't do early admissions that way. So all of this decisions do get made at the same time. And then the next one is a suggestion for Delsa about video gaming. So yay, hopefully you saw that, Delsa. Looks like we have another. Oh, that one got answered. Any other questions that we can answer for you today? Okay. If not, you are welcome to reach out to us. Again, on the website, my email address is thatcomplitestudentservices@umich.edu. I'm happy to field your questions, get them routed to the right folks for you if I'm not the right person to answer those questions. Do publications matter in the application?
No, don't worry about publication at all. I mean, you know, when when I was a graduate student, you know, it's not like in the field of English where they publish a lot. You know, in comparative literature, we don't do that. So, I studied my publication route, like really as an assistant professor. What is important is that you define yourself as a scholar, as you taking your classes. As I said, you know, it's extremely important that you come in with a research project that you can change, you know. So in changing that is because you're trying to think which kind of scholar you want to become, right? You know, so you have to concentrate on that. Once you have decided that, you know, maybe I want to combine my research with translation. Once you have that, then you can start thinking about publication. Publication is not really an issue at this stage. You can publish later on. You know, what is important is to get good training. Once you have a good training, then you can start thinking about defining yourself as a scholar and then start publishing. So don't worry about publication yet. First, you study, you know, you solidify your field of studies, and then, you know, each step, one step at a time.
All right. The next question, are students expected to study primary literary sources in several languages, or can foreign languages be used in more of a flexible manner in secondary research?
Flexible secondary research. I mean, you know, when when you read, you know, I was just I'm a senior editor in cultural critique, and you know, it's always good to read Lacan in French if you can, you know, Derrida in French if you can, all those scholars, right? Fine, in German, whatever. But if not, you read translation, right? It doesn't matter, right? It's always the reason why we ask you to read languages in comparative literature, because it's always good to go to the primary sources. The primary sources are essential, right? You know, go to the text, the primary text. You know, I had one of my advisors as an undergraduate spoke many languages. He always told me, go to the primary text. So if you read German, then you go to Goethe, you read German. You know, if you read French, you go to Derrida in French. It's always good. But if not, go to the translation.
Mhm.
But then once in a while, when you can use a French word or German word, it's always good. You know, that's why you need languages, because you can really use that with the primary material.
And I would say we have students who are definitely doing a combination of
Mhm.
both, right? So
Yeah.
they are doing some primary work and then some secondary sources. So there are also some that after they've met their language proficiency in the second and third years are going on to start a third language or a fourth language so that they can, you know, they're not going as deep into it, but so they can have a little bit more connection with those primary or secondary sources. So.
You know, I was telling, I'm doing independent study with a graduate student in history. I was telling her yesterday, I said, do you know why we in comparative literature, we read a variety of fields, even your field in history, is because we have languages and then we can read different fields. You know, we can open up the readings that we're doing. You know, that's why it's so interesting the way we read. You know, is a way of reading, actually, you know, because she was asking me, what is comparative literature? As is the way of reading, the way we open up the fields, the way you can read in so many different fields, is the way how you read, the finesse, the subtleties that you bring to your readings. You know, if you read Russian, then you're so lucky because you can open up, you know, the field, right? So, yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, well, like I said, you have our contact information, so feel free to reach out both while you're filling out the application or in the process of while we're deciding and reviewing. We're happy to answer questions. The one question I can't usually answer is what are my chances of getting selected? That just depends on the field every year and what it looks like. But pretty much any other question,
Yeah.
I will do my very, very best to get you a quick answer. Happy to talk about funding. Like I said, we're happy to help if you're not sure what goes in that personal statement or the statement of purpose.
Yeah.
My final piece of advice is just to read those two prompts very carefully and try to get things in the right statement.
Yeah.
Any
You can
parting words?
you can reach out to me too if you have questions. When you're writing those, reach out to me. You know, I can quickly tell you this is working, is not working. That's no issue at all. Please do. I can help. Yeah.
All right. Otherwise, thank you for attending. And we look forward to seeing more from you.
Yeah,
So.
and I'm sorry again, the technology family, I couldn't be there at the beginning. So I had to rush out to come and so that at least you can see me. So
Thank you.
yeah, bye.